Welcome to the podcast Odyssey to Utopia. On this show, we interview founders and entrepreneurs to discover insights about their entrepreneurial journeys and some highlights of their experience. We also explore the challenges they've encountered, how they overcame those challenges, and what challenges they're currently facing. This podcast is sponsored by Utopian Help PBC. As a public benefit corporation, Utopian Help is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs, founders, and their employees overcome the challenges of being a small business, allowing them to thrive personally and professionally. Small business is hard work, and that often leaves individuals feeling isolated. This podcast helps bridge that isolation and help founders feel connected to others who are experiencing similar challenges. At Utopian Help, we use our expertise to smooth out the rough spots in the road by providing challenge intervention services at no charge and low-cost managed business services that offload tasks like bookkeeping, technology, cybersecurity, human resources, and document management. You can learn more at https://utopian.help. I am super excited to welcome our special guest, Kate Van Waes, to the show today. Kate runs an executive management service and can definitely tell us more about her business and her background. Kate, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Please give us some background on yourself and your business.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jeff. So like you said, I am a strategic advisor for executives. I also do a lot of nonprofit board development, so helping nonprofit boards function better. And that can include strategic planning, training, onboarding, coaching the board, all kinds of things. And I do leadership and management training and a bit of career coaching too. But how I got there is a long story that I will try to summarize very quickly in my background. So I started as a research scientist. I was on some NASA Mars missions. I then moved on to working for the US government. I was at the State Department working on the intersection of humanitarian aid and terrorism and helping with UN negotiations there, even led UN negotiation at one point, and doing advising for cabinet level officials and ambassadors. And then I moved on to the leadership team for the Obama administration's flagship global development initiative, focused on economic growth and around the world, but economic growth through agriculture and through hunger and malnutrition. And then I moved over to Bono's nonprofit. So Bono, the lead singer of U2, and I built out their work on women-led economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa. And then I ran a national nonprofit for a while as the executive director that was focused on conservation and equity in the outdoors. And then I started my business. So I have crossed sectors and the world, I guess.
Wow, that is incredibly impressive. And thank you for your service. So what aspects of those roles really fed into your decision to start your service? And how did that foundation make you a better business owner?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question because it really was all those experiences that led directly to me starting my own business. So when I was advising higher level folks at the State Department, that involved, I really noticed that what they needed from me was someone that they could trust to give good advice, someone that when it's just the two of us in the elevator going up to the big meeting, right? They know they can lean on me to shore them up, to remind them, these are the things that are most important that you need to say. You've got this, and this is why, etc. Bounce ideas off of, right? Like, for them to ask me, what if I use this talking point? Is that going to work? I think you should tweak it this way, and then that's perfect, right? And then when I was in leadership positions, that's what I really needed too, was someone that I could bounce ideas off of, a thought partner. So when I started my own business, I started it because I had been in the leadership positions. I had also been an advisor for very high level officials with very high stakes going on. So I knew that nothing would really surprise me or shock me. I've probably seen it before. And I always joke, I've been yelled at by scarier people than you, whoever that is. And so I knew when I started my own business what I really wanted as a leader and what they needed. And so that drove me starting my business to provide strategic advising for executives in a different way from some of the usual executive coaching.
Excellent. Well, that's very enlightening. And I think that the line, I've been yelled at by scarier people than you, will go into my own book. It's excellent. So what were the triggers that made you decide now was the right time to found your business?
I love that question too, because I grew up having worked since I was legally able to work, right? I always needed a W-2. I always needed a paycheck. You don't jump without having the next paycheck and all of that. So I always, of course, grew up working, taking nothing for granted kind of thing. But it never occurred to me in that whole time, it was always, I never thought I'd start my own business. Like that sounded terrifying. I was like, there are business people out there that are really smart business people, and that's what they do. They start their own business and launch new things. I just work at places, right? And I may be a leader at that place, but I'm hired to do the job at a place that I did not build. And I think partly all of the experiences that I had over time helped me to start I think really because I think I was working across sectors, it really helped me to start to see that I did know a lot more than I realized about business because I had worked across so many sectors at that point. And when I was the executive director at a national nonprofit, I was hired to turn it around. It needed a lot of work, and I was hired to kind of gut it and rework it. And in doing that, you really become the person of all trades, right? You need to be able to do all the things, figure out all the things. And so I was like, actually, you know what? I could start my own business because I know how now to like run the QuickBooks for my business, right? I probably know enough to like mess it up, not enough to do it perfectly. But that really, I think that experience and then just getting to a certain stage in life where you just get more and more confidence in yourself and belief in yourself. And you know what? I've got this. I've been around for a while. I can do this at this point. Finally helped me take that leap. But it was something that like a year before I did it or 2 years before I did it, I would probably have said, no way is this happening. I have no idea.
Excellent. So when did you found your business?
I resigned from my executive director role in the fall of 2022. I think that's right. And because it was just time for, I had fixed it. I'd done the thing, and then it was time to hand over to fresh leadership that had a lot more energy and all of that, right? I was starting to feel burned out, which it was no fault of the organization. Just that's what happens when you're in that kind of leadership role after a while sometimes. And I was really getting this urge to start my own thing. And I actually, though, had applied for a few other executive director roles. I came really close on one and then was offered another one. And I realized when they offered it to me, I started to kind of panic. I was like, wait a minute, nope, I don't want to do that. I actually don't want to do that. I really do want to do my own thing. And it took me, I felt badly because I'd gone through the whole process interview, like I hadn't meant to trick them or anything. But it really took that for me to realize, okay, I can take this leap because this is actually really what I want to do. But I took some time off. So I took, that whole Q4 2022 off. I'm just going to be mom and wife and friend and daughter and sister and whatever. Right now I'm going to be Kate. That has nothing to do with work, and just do the holidays and enjoy. And we knew that we would be we were living outside of DC. We knew we'd be moving to Montana in June of that next year. So I started to do a little bit of stuff at the beginning of the year, but I was mostly like, I need to get my family ready to go. And then we're going to do a whole cross country move. So I didn't really start working on it, I would say, in earnest until summer of 2023. So it's been about a year and a half.
Excellent. So you look at this, we call the next section your challenge section. And in this section, really want to understand what are the things that have been hardest for you to deal with as a new business owner. So as you look back at the last year and a half and some change, what do you see as the biggest challenge you've faced in your business?
I think the biggest challenge is the same kind of challenge we often face in sports, which is the challenge isn't actually the physical one, it's the mental one. So the challenge isn't what we're doing in our small business. In my case, it's consulting, but there's many kinds of small businesses, right? It isn't getting that small business going or the work you're doing in the small business, because once you're ready to launch your own business, you love that thing. You feel really passionate about thing. You're really good at it, right? So there's no question you're good at what you're doing, but you have to get past this mental hurdle of, you're really good at it, but you've got to sell it, right? And you've got to get other people to understand that you're good at it, and you can help them or sell them the thing that they really need, or, whatever it is. And you've got to get past that mental hurdle of there are going to be times when it's up and down. And especially in consulting, it can be feast or famine, right? There can be times during the year where you're like, my schedule's full. I can't do any more than this. And then there are times when you're like, how am I going to pull in my next client? What am I going to do? Right? And you have to mentally steel yourself for that and not lose your confidence in that, right? Remember to keep your confidence, keep your mojo in there, and remember that you're on the right path. Keep experimenting, keep learning, keep going, and you will get there, and it comes back again. And in fact, that reminds me that this past January, last month, right? I was starting to have that same thing. I took a few weeks off around Christmas time. And then I was like, I had a few clients lined up, but definitely not a full schedule. And I was like, I don't have a full schedule lined up yet. What am I going to do? And my husband reminded me, Kate, you did this last year at exactly this time and you were fine. So just got to remember to ride that wave.
Well, it's definitely a common challenge. They call it the consulting roller coaster in many circles. Do you have any tricks or techniques that you can share that would enlighten others on things that you do to help you get over that, oh my God, feeling?
Yeah. Yes. One of the things that's really helpful is use that time to network. So, link back up with people that you haven't talked to in a while, especially at the beginning of the year. It's a good time to be like, hey, Happy New Year. We haven't talked in a while. We met up last May and we haven't talked in a while. Let's catch up again, right? Networking doesn't have to be this awkward thing. It can really be like, let's catch up. Tell me about what's going on with you and how can I help you? And I'll tell you what's going on with me, right? And it can be people that you already know but haven't talked to in a while, or someone you've really wanted to be connected with that a friend of yours can connect you with, whatever, right? You don't have to make networking awkward, but networking helps a lot because as you start talking to folks, the gears start turning in your brain. It can unlock you when you're feeling stuck or when you've hit a plateau, right? And you start to realize, yeah, something that person said really gave me a good idea for something I need to try here. Or suddenly you realize, oh my gosh, there's something we could work on together. Let's try this thing, right? So networking, big plus, keeps you busy, keeps your creative brain fed. And then the other thing I would say is start working on something, right? So for me, that can be, you know what I haven't had time to do in a while? I didn't create an actual kind of marketable designed version of this guide that I was going to write on resume writing, right? For the career coaching piece that I do. So I'm going to take the time right now to work on that, and I'll have it ready when new clients come along that I know are coming. But right now I'm busy on this, and it helps keep my brain busy. It helps me remember that I do have a job, even if it goes up and down like this, right? That there's still many productive things that I can do. So if there's ever a time when I'm feeling like my schedule isn't full enough and I'm starting to worry about it, I'm like, there's things I can do right now that I can work on, that I can get ready for a project that might come to fruition later that's going to be bigger. But I've got the base for it now so that later, when I know I'm going to be too busy and full up on meetings and clients and everything, and I won't have time to do it, I'll already have it ready and I can just pull it out of my back pocket and be like, I've got that. Let's work on it together. And then the third thing, is to spend time filling your creative brain. So especially if you have a job or you tend to be a job that uses the analytical side of your brain, or you tend to be analytical, when you feel stuck, don't sit there and start making pro cons lists and charts and data tables in Excel or Google Sheets or something. Don't analyze your way out of it, because it's the creative part of your brain that needs to figure out your way out of it. And the creative part of your brain isn't fed by charts and pro cons lists and researching. The creative part of your brain is fed by reading a book, doing some sketching, listening to music or creating music, going for a walk outside, moving through the outdoor world. Actually, there's a reason why there are Buddhist monks who do walking meditation outside. It feeds your brain in different ways. Get rest, right? Use those creative pursuits and rest as a form of productivity. And then it will just come to you. You'll wake up the next day and go, oh, that's the thing I need to do, because your creative brain finally got fed.
Excellent advice. I have to say, I've learned something on this podcast. Those are just generally good ideas, and they definitely will connect with much of our audience. So thank you for sharing. So as you think back, sometimes the biggest challenge is not the challenge that kept you up the most at night. Do you have any particular stress or challenge that you found just you couldn't let go?
I think some of the things that can be hard to let go that I've seen in myself and I've seen in clients that I work with, and I would say I have gotten to the point where I am much better at letting go of this now. but I had to learn to get there, is that it can be easy to, especially when you're doing your own thing, launching your own business, that's when you really have to rely on yourself, and you have to trust yourself more than anybody else. You've got to trust yourself, right? And so if you have been through situations at previous jobs that were difficult, or you worked in a toxic work environment, or you had a boss that was really difficult, or a colleague that was really difficult, or something that kind of killed your professional mojo a bit, right? Or made you start doubting yourself, or made you start thinking, maybe it is me that's the problem, right? I think that's happened to a lot of us in the workplace. It's not talked about much, and workplace trauma is a real thing. And workplace abuse, being abused in the workplace, is a real thing. It doesn't just happen at home, right? And so all of these things, they don't get talked about much. You think that you're supposed to be able to just take it. It's a professional setting. I'm supposed to be able to just take it, whatever's happening, and shoulder it. And then you kind of don't work on it, and you let it seep in. And yeah, it, like I said before, it kills your professional mojo. And so you really got to, in general in life, move past those things, right? Seek therapy, all the kinds of things that can help you move past that and get back to trusting yourself, because you need to do that when you're doing your own business. At the same time, and this is the kind of funny thing that sounds contradictory, doing your own business gives you that mojo back, because it's giving you that trust in yourself again, right? Because you build it and it starts to work and people start coming. Right? Like in what movie was that with Kevin Costner, the baseball movie? Yeah, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come, right? So you build it and people start coming, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it worked. I was right. This is really cool. I'm good at this. And you start to get that trust in yourself again. So when you take the leap, you've just got to hold on to that and let go of that other detritus. You don't need it. Give yourself positive self-talk. Even if you don't have a client yet, or you don't have a customer yet, or, whatever it is, you're at the very beginning stages and you're just trying to build it, positive talk to yourself. The fact that you're even thinking about building something and starting to do it means you're putting something positive out into the world. You're not taking away from the world. You are net positive adding to the world already. So just keep going.
That is truly inspirational advice. We'll get that out on a reel for everyone to read, because I really do think that is one of the harder things as a startup founder, is that continued belief or trust in yourself when it's not going well. It is definitely a challenge. So thank you. Like I was hearing your words. I'm like, man, I can relate to that. So
I think we all can. I was speaking to myself too.
So the next section of the podcast is our do-over challenge. So they say hindsight is 20/20. You can look back and you can see the decision, and you have so much better information after you've been through the event and just as you've grown in life. Are there any challenges that you've had where you look back and you're like, man, I wish I did it differently?
I mean, in a way, yes, but I very honestly don't tend to. I don't know why, because I can sometimes be a pessimist more than an optimist. I train myself to be an optimist, but for some reason, I have never really had the problem of regrets. I make the decision, I go on, I've got the next thing to think about, and I don't tend to get caught up in that, but I do try to help people who have gotten caught up in it, right? And so what I say to them is, the decisions that you make over time, are they all ideal decisions? Are they all the best decisions that you possibly could have made? No, we're all human, right? But at the same time, sometimes you're making the best decision you can at that moment with the information you have, in the situation that you are in the mind frame that you are in the time of life you are in, right? I would never now, as Kate at 48 with 2 kids living in Montana or whatever, make the same decision that I would have as Kate at 31 working 15-hour days at the State Department, traveling all over the world. It was a completely different part of my life. And so the decision making is different. So I think what I like to focus on more is not what would I have done differently, but constantly practicing positive self-talk about all of that, about everything, right? And maybe that's the thing I would have done differently. If I could go back and talk to myself, be like, do not nag yourself, right? There's enough crap that happens in the world. You don't need to add that to yourself. Be your own best friend. Talk to yourself like you would to your best friend, and just practice that all the time.
When you think back, are there times where you identified that you were doing that nagging or negative self-talk, just kind of a tool or technique to help others identify when they're doing that negative behavior?
There are times I'm sure this morning at some point did, right? Definitely not perfect at it at this point. I think it is, and I'm like in the midst of still doing this for myself, right? But what I have found is working for me is identifying it, like paying attention to it, tuning into it. Like, am I even in my head or out loud or what I'm doing that thing? Turn that around. Turn that around in my head right now. And once it becomes, and I'm getting better and better at it because it becomes like muscle memory. It's a bit like riding a bike or learning to downhill ski or whatever. It's hard at first. It feels clunky at first. You fall over a lot. And then once your brain and your body finally connect and like get the motions down, you're like, oh, now I've got this. Why was I falling all the time before? And also, why am I not now? Like all of a sudden, I've got it. Because you just kept practicing it over and over and your body finally got it. And it's the same, it will be the same thing in your brain. If you're just constantly practicing, you have to practice it like you do riding a bike or skiing or whatever the thing is, you got to practice it. But if you do that, it becomes muscle memory and then you don't have to focus on it so much and you don't have to practice it so much. It's not that you'll never, ever say, tell yourself something negative about yourself or be frustrated with yourself if you didn't do the best thing, but it becomes a lot easier. It becomes, just part of your everyday experience.
You say practice. Is there kind of a technique that you use when you're practicing it? Or is it automatically turn it around? Are there things that you can share to help people who are trying to take on that practice?
Okay, so here's one thing I started. One thing is, like I said, as soon as you hear it, the practice is noticing it. It's like starting to tune into it, right? Don't just ignore it, tune into it. And then say the opposite to yourself or go, pretend my best friend is having that problem. What am I going to say to them? Right? Or my kid is, or whatever. Right? So, because you're always going to uptalk your kids and your best friend. Right? So do that to yourself. Another thing is, my husband got me this one Christmas. It's the I'm Kind of Awesome journal. And so you write in it, what the date was, right? And you write, and it's not dated, so you can write in it as often as you want. And you just write why you're kind of awesome. So let's see, April 3rd, 2024, I wrote, I just did some power yoga. Pretty good, right? These don't have to be amazing things. I'm a great mom. I guess I felt that way that day. We all have the days where we don't. That day,
depends on if they're teenagers or not.
Yeah. And I'm truly helping people in my job. So I tried to think of 3 things to write down, right? And then, on another day I made a killer artisan loaf over the weekend. I really did. It's a really easy recipe and it's delicious. And I'll send it to you if you want it. Anyway, so you just, that's another practice to remind yourself. Like, we do sometimes, you've heard of doing gratitude journals, right? But I love this I'm kind of awesome journal because you
Excellent.
are. It feels weird
good
at first,
advice,
right?
but
I'm not awesome. Other people are awesome. Yes, you are.
I will echo that recommendation. And to all the founders listening, you are awesome. You are doing something, you're giving back. So that's just a great suggestion. Thank you. So as you look forward over the next year, what do you feel is the biggest challenge facing your business today, if you're willing to share?
Yeah. I think right now, the biggest challenge is dealing with the kind of chaos that is coming out of DC right now. There's chaos. There are, illegal actions being taken. There are actions being taken that target vulnerable groups. And that's something that not only are we all kind of dealing with personally and with friends and family, et cetera, but all of the leaders I work with are dealing with. So now they're trying to figure out, how does my organization, especially if they work at nonprofits, for example, a lot of funding is being yanked from nonprofits, right? And so how does my organization now pivot to dealing with what this new reality is right now that also seems to change every day and is really unpredictable, et cetera? How do I deal with that for the organization to keep going? How do I also deal with my own, and I'm speaking about like my clients, not me. How do I deal with my own as a leader, my own feelings, personal feelings about what's going on, plus making sure that I am being the leader that my team needs, because they're all dealing with personal feelings about what's going on. And some of my employees are being targeted right now and their identities are being targeted, et cetera. So it's just a lot to hold for a leader right now. It's a really tough time to be a leader, but also like a really critical time for it. Like this is when your leadership at a true, very deep level gets really tested. And so I think the challenge for me will be making sure that not only am I giving them the deep support they need and really rooting that in what strategy and what I think will actually work, and not thinking it through very deeply, which I always do. It's just that it feels heavier right now, but also that I am taking care of myself at the same time, because you can't fill other people's cup if your cup is empty, right? It sounds like a cheesy saying, but it's so true. Think about the times when you've gotten way too tired or way too overstressed, and then you come home and you're like crankier with your kids and you're crankier with your spouse and whatever, you just don't have anything left, right? So I want to bring my full self to my clients. And so I'm going to have to make sure that I'm really focused on that too, on making sure I'm good, I'm on an even keel, I'm ready to go. And that takes intention to do that. It's really easy as any adult in the world, but also as a parent or a caregiver or whatever, to let your needs go last, which doesn't actually help.
That makes sense. Do you have any plans or thoughts of how you're going to overcome that kind of deprioritization of yourself as all these other crises are happening?
Yeah. Yes. So social media is kind of a toxic waste dump right now, right? It has become that way. People are mean on social media. People are whatever. There's misinformation flying around all over the place, et cetera, et cetera. It's gotten kind of hellscapey. And there's just, bad news being thrown at us constantly, because that's what gets attention, right? The good news doesn't get as much attention. And so I have made a promise to myself, because I've noticed it really helps me, to only pay attention to social media and the news like 2 days a week. And I use social media for work. I post things on LinkedIn about, all the kinds of stuff that I work on, et cetera. But I'm only paying attention to that. And news-wise, I'll listen to their NPR does a digest in the morning, a 15-minute digest. So news-wise, I'll listen to that digest. If it didn't rise to that level, I don't need to know it. And I lived in DC for almost 20 years. I am a news junkie. I am a policy nerd and a politics nerd. I love to geek out about that stuff. But right now, it's a lot, right? So limiting that, reading a book, a normal novel that I want to read, that has nothing to do with work, that isn't doom scrolling on my phone before I go to sleep at night. So charge the phone outside your room if you got to. Don't look at that at night. Don't look at first thing in the morning before you go down to make sure your kids are getting dressed and have breakfast and stuff, because then you're just going to go down cranky if the first thing you do is look at your phone. I can kind of guarantee that for everyone right now. So don't do that. And, I block time off on my calendar to work out. Make sure I do that, because I am not a happy person if I have not worked out in the day. I also block off time to take a walk outside, like a 20-minute walk at some point in the middle of the day. I have blocked off on my calendar one Friday a month. It's a personal day. I don't do any work stuff. I don't let things creep into that. That's my day. I do my own thing. Those kinds of things, making sure that you're really blocking them off in your calendar and you're building them as habits. And it can feel hard to block them off in your calendar, and it can feel hard to let go of your phone too. It can feel really hard at first, but you've got to, what do they say? Like it takes a couple weeks or something to build a habit. I forget what the statistic is, but once you build the habit, it actually doesn't take that long. You get used to it and then you're fine. I didn't look at my phone at all over the holidays. Not at all. To the point where we'd go out to go do something and I'd leave it at home. I didn't even realize I didn't have it. I was fine.
Yes, I
survived.
think that's good advice for everyone. Just harder for others than it is. And it's hard as a small business owner. If you're living really on your phone, some of us have a little more urgent contacts, but I do agree that if you can let it go, let it go.
Set a boundary though, because believe me, I have worked in urgent situations, true urgent situations where I need to be contacted by, the Secretary of State's chief of staff at any point, right? I was still able to set boundaries for myself. So you can set boundaries for yourself. Everybody's boundaries are going to be different though. Work-life balance isn't the same for everybody. What works for everybody to de-stress and calm down isn't the same. So I shared what works for me. Different things are going to work for you, but just the whole point is be intentional about it and start to build a habit. And you'll see that, oh, actually, I can do that. It's okay. Things survived. Whatever it is coming at you, you can't fix at 2 a.m. anyway. No one's around to help you fix it and nothing's open. So just sleep and you'll fix it better tomorrow.
So we've covered a number of different challenges on the podcast so far. Is there any kind of closing words or closing thoughts that sum up how you feel about the things we've talked about? Just an opportunity to, share your wisdom.
Yeah. Well, like I said, positive self-talk, keep doing it, practice it. It's going to feel super cheesy at first. Look in the mirror and do it to yourself if you need to. Make it cheesy so that it's kind of funny, make yourself laugh about it, but do it all the time because trust in yourself is your number one tool when you are running your own business. When starting a startup, when you're running a small business, trust in yourself is your number one tool. You know how to do the rest of the stuff. That's not the part that you need to worry about as much. You can do that, but trusting in yourself, if you're not intentional about it, that's where you'll start to falter. So be intentional about trusting yourself, hyping yourself up, being your own hype person, being your own entourage. Do that and take time for yourself to rest, to do creative pursuits and consider it a part of your productivity. Because I guarantee you, if you think that you've got to do all the other technical aspects of your business first and get to that other stuff when you can, your business is not going to be as successful. It's not. I don't care what business you're in, because you are not doing anything for the creative side of your brain. You're doing all the analytical stuff.
Well, Kate, you've shared an immense amount of helpful knowledge and great information. If anyone wants to follow up with you, what's the best way for them to reach out and contact?
Yeah, go to my website, vanwaesconsulting.com. So VANWAES consulting, all one word, .com. And you can get to me, that my email's on there, et cetera, et cetera. You can see what I do, and that's the easiest way.
Excellent. Well, we will get that embedded on the video as well to make it easy for people to find you. I'd like to thank you again for joining us today, Kate. Your advice is incredibly valuable, and it really feeds back that research has shown over 70% of small business owners and entrepreneurs experience mental health challenges. And I absolutely know that the things you talked about today can make a difference in their lives and in their outcomes. If you're experiencing mental health crisis, please reach out, call 988, get help if you need it. Otherwise, if it's not life and death, there are still resources out there available to help. Kate would be a great resource. Utopian Help is here as well. Our business is about making your business easier. Look us up on LinkedIn or Facebook, and we look forward to being able to help. Thanks, and we look forward to seeing you next time.